When a cop is wrongfully convicted of murder, he makes one final plea to hug his daughter before he's taken away. But as he holds her, he notices the bruises, the way she trembles in his arms. Then she whispers something that stops his heart cold. Something is very, very wrong. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe in justice, be sure to like and subscribe for more. The courtroom buzzed with tense anticipation, the air thick with the weight of the verdict that was about to be delivered. Detective Ryan Calloway, a man who had once commanded respect in the Brighton Police Department, sat motionless in his orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him. His face remained unreadable, but his clenched jaw and the steel in his eyes betrayed the storm brewing inside him. The jury finds the defendant, Ryan Calloway, guilty of first-degree murder. The word struck him like a blow, but he refused to react. He had prepared for this moment, knowing that the justice system, the very one he had sworn to uphold, had failed him. A setup, a perfectly orchestrated frame job that painted him as a cold-blooded murderer. The prosecution had woven a narrative so airtight, so flawless, that even his closest colleagues had turned their backs on him. The evidence had been damning. Ballistics confirmed that the bullet lodged in Darius Kemp's skull came from Ryan's service weapon. Surveillance footage placed him near the scene at the time of the murder. Testimonies from fellow officers corroborated his supposed motive. Kemp was an informant gone rogue, and Ryan had been the last officer assigned to him. The truth, however, was something far more sinister. Ryan had spent months in pretrial detention, screaming his innocence to deaf ears. He knew someone had orchestrated this entire thing. Someone with power, someone who wanted him silenced. And the moment he fought back, trying to dig deeper into the case, he had been thrown under the bus. His closest friend, Detective Jason Carter, had nearly been suspended for questioning the evidence against him. The warning had been clear: stay silent or suffer the same fate. Now, Ryan sat, sentenced to life in maximum security. But he wasn't thinking about himself. His eyes scanned the courtroom, searching for the one face that mattered, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. He was the only one she had left after his wife passed away in a hit-and-run 3 years ago. The driver was arrested, but Lily had lost her mother, and how she was about to lose him, too. She sat at the back, her small hands clutching a tattered, stuffed rabbit, the one he had bought her when she was 5. Her face was streaked with silent tears, her lower lip trembling as she tried to stay strong. The sight shattered him in a way that no prison sentence ever could. The judge's voice cut through the heavy silence. Does the defendant have any final requests before transfer? Ryan's breath hitched. He only had one. Please just let me hug my daughter one last time. A murmur spread across the courtroom. Even the judge, a man known for his brutal sentencing, hesitated. A moment of humanity flickered across his face before he exhaled heavily. 3 minutes. The bailiffs moved toward Lily, gently leading her to the front of the courtroom. Ryan felt his hands tremble as they unlocked his cuffs just for this moment. And then she was in his arms. For the last time, she clung to him, her little fingers digging into his jumpsuit. He pressed a kiss into her curls, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. "It's okay, baby," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I love you so much. You're gonna be okay." Lily shook her head fiercely, her shoulders trembling. Then she whispered something that made his blood run cold. "Daddy, he said if you don't stop, he'll hurt me too." Ryan's body went rigid. A silent, violent fury ignited inside him as his grip instinctively tightened for a fraction of a second before he quickly let go. He scanned her face, then her arms and neck. His stomach dropped when he saw it, a faint bruise just beneath the sleeve of her dress. His world narrowed. Lily had just given him the first clue in a case he didn't even know he was working. His voice remained calm, but his mind was racing. "Who, Lily? Who told you that?" he murmured. Lily hesitated, but before she could answer, the bailiffs yanked him back. "Time's up." Ryan tried to resist, but they pulled him away from her grasp, dragging him toward the exit. No, he needed more time. Lily was in danger. He twisted back, his eyes locking onto hers. "Stay with Uncle Jason, baby. You hear me? Stay with him." She nodded frantically, but her tear-filled eyes haunted him as the door slammed shut. The prison walls felt like they were closing in, But it wasn't the weight of his conviction pressing down on Ryan Calloway. It was the suffocating knowledge that his daughter was in danger. He had spent the past 48 hours doing everything in his power to raise the alarm. He had demanded to speak with a child welfare agent, a detective, a warden, and anyone who would listen. Every request was met with the same cold indifference. You lost your right to be concerned about that little girl the second you put a bullet in Darius Kemp's head. No amount of insistence, no desperation in his voice, could sway the guards who saw him as nothing more than a convicted murderer grasping at straws. To them, he was a liar, a manipulator, a man who would say anything to save himself. But this wasn't about him. Lily was in danger, and no one cared. Ryan paced his small cell, hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. His mind raced through every case he had worked, every arrest, every powerful enemy he had made. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to take him down, and now they were going after his daughter. He had to find a way to warn Jason. Across the city, Detective Jason Carter wasn't sleeping. The dim glow of the desk lamp in his apartment flickered as he sifted through stacks of old case files. His suspension had sidelined him, but it had also given him one advantage. He wasn't under department scrutiny anymore. No one was watching him. For weeks he had been trying to piece together what really happened the night Darius Kemp was murdered. Ryan had been right about one thing. This wasn't just a frame job. This was a calculated execution. Somebody inside the department wanted Kemp dead, and they needed Ryan to take the fall for it. But why? Jason tapped his pen against his desk, staring at the timeline of events he had pinned to the wall. There was a glaring gap, one that should have been filled by eyewitness testimony. But no one had come forward. Not a single person in the building had seen anything, or at least that's what they claimed. Jason exhaled sharply and reached for an old contact book. If the official witness list had nothing, he needed to look somewhere off the record. He flipped through the pages until he landed on a name. Vanessa Green, a bartender, an informant, and someone who had mysteriously disappeared shortly after Kemp's murder. If anyone knew something, it was her. Jason found her in a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The place reeked of stale cigarettes and cheap liquor. The flickering neon sign casting an eerie red glow across the parking lot. Room 214. Jason knocked. No answer. He knocked again, more forcefully this time. Vanessa, it's Jason Carter. The door cracked open just an inch, revealing a pair of wide, terrified eyes. Go away, Vanessa whispered. Jason shoved his foot against the door before she could shut it. I just need to talk. Her gaze darted down the hall. Paranoia etched into every movement. She looked thinner than he remembered, jittery, her once vibrant expression now hollowed out by fear. You don't get it, she hissed. I can't help you. You shouldn't be here. Jason pulled out his badge, a silent reminder of who he was, even if he was off the force. Ryan Calloway was convicted of murder. You and I both know he didn't do it. Vanessa flinched at the name. Her fingers trembled against the door frame. Jason took a step closer, lowering his voice. If you know something, now's the time to talk. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the parking lot again. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she stepped back and let him in. Inside the motel room was a disaster. Half-packed suitcases, scattered papers, clothes thrown across the bed like she had been preparing to run. Jason kept his voice steady. Who are you running from, Vanessa? She let out a shuddering breath. The same people you're trying to expose. Jason felt his stomach drop. Vanessa wrung her hands, pacing the floor. I was in Darius Kemp's building that night, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I saw who went in before the shots were fired. Jason's pulse quickened. It wasn't Calloway, was it? She shook her head. Jason leaned forward. Then who? Vanessa squeezed her eyes shut. When she spoke, her voice trembled. 2 officers, she whispered. I saw them go inside. Jason's blood ran cold. She knew who killed Darius Kemp. But Vanessa wasn't done. Her entire body shook as she turned back to him. She turned toward the bedside table, reached into the drawer, and pulled out a burner phone. She scrolled through a few messages before showing the screen to Jason. He read the words once, then twice. His hands started shaking. If Calloway doesn't stop fighting his conviction, we'll make sure his little girl disappears. Jason's chest tightened. Lily. This wasn't just about silencing Ryan anymore. They had leverage, and they were going to use it. Jason shot to his feet. "We have to move. Now." Vanessa stepped back. "I can't." Jason grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. This isn't just about you anymore. They've already got Calloway's. Now they're coming for his daughter." Vanessa's breath hitched. That was all the hesitation Jason needed. "We're getting you into protective custody," he said, pulling out his phone. "But first I need to get to Lily." He dialed Lily's school. It rang. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Jason's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He was already moving, sprinting out of the motel room toward his car. "Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone but me." Vanessa nodded, her face pale with fear. Jason threw the car into gear, tires screeching, as he sped toward Lily's school. She would still be in class. She had to be. 10 minutes. He was 10 minutes away. Jason's hands tightened around the steering wheel. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A voice, low and mocking, slid through the receiver. "You're too late." The line went dead. Who's behind Ryan's downfall? And could they be the same ones who took Lily? Drop a like if you're ready for the truth, because this story is just getting started. Keep watching. Jason Carter stood in front of the elementary school, his hands clenched into fists. The air around him felt stifling, heavy with the weight of his own failure. The parking lot was empty now, just a handful of cars left as the last of the teachers locked up for the evening. But Lily should have been here. Instead, the school's front office staff had been oddly dismissive when he demanded answers. Her mother picked her up early, they had said, but Lily didn't have a mother. Jason had pushed harder, his badge flashing, even though his suspension made it meaningless. The receptionist barely looked up. "Sir, the paperwork checks out. A guardian signed her out an hour ago." Jason had grabbed the sign-out sheet, scanning for a name. No signature, just a scrawled line where a name should have been. And suddenly, Jason understood. This wasn't incompetence. It was deliberate. Someone inside the system wanted Lily gone. Back at the precinct, the case moved at a crawl. The disappearance of a detective's daughter should have triggered every alarm. But Jason watched as the officers in charge did the bare minimum. Reports were filed, but no one canvassed the area. No bolo was issued. No Amber Alert went out. It was all for show. Jason knew these men. He had trusted them. He had served beside them. And now he could see it clearly. Some of them weren't on his side. The department was infected. And whoever had framed Ryan wasn't just covering up a murder. They were cleaning up loose ends. Jason gritted his teeth. Lily was leverage. They didn't just want Ryan locked away. They wanted him to stop fighting. This wasn't just about framing a cop. This was about breaking him. Jason couldn't let that happen. In a dark motel room across town, Vanessa Green sat on the edge of the bed, chain smoking with shaking hands. She had agreed to go on the record. She had agreed to testify. But every instinct in her body told her it was a death sentence. Jason watched her carefully. She was pale, exhausted, jumpy. He couldn't blame her. The moment she stepped into a courtroom, she would paint a target on her back. Still, they had no choice. Lily was missing. Time was running out. "Are you sure about this?" Jason asked. Vanessa let out a hollow laugh. "No, but if I don't talk, a little girl disappears, and I'm not living with that." Jason nodded. He had pulled every string he had left, calling in a favor with a judge who wasn't bought and paid for. They had an emergency hearing scheduled in the morning. If they could get Vanessa on record, if she could testify that Ryan wasn't the killer, the case would be blown wide open. It wouldn't just exonerate Ryan. It would expose the rot inside the department. Jason checked his weapon, scanning the motel parking lot. They needed to get her somewhere safe. He turned back to Vanessa. "Pack a bag. We're leaving in 5. She barely had time to reach for her purse when the first gunshot tore through the door. Gunfire erupted, splintering the motel door. Jason reacted on instinct, grabbing Vanessa and pulling her to the floor as bullets tore through the room. Glass shattered, wood splintered. "Stay down," Jason barked, unholstering his weapon. 3 masked figures stormed through the doorway. Jason fired first, 2 quick shots hitting one of them in the chest. He dropped instantly. The other 2 scattered, one flipping over the motel dresser for cover, while the other fired blindly into the room. Jason kept Vanessa low, covering her with his body. Back door, he whispered. When I say go, you run. Vanessa's breathing was ragged, but she nodded. Another shot rang out, punching a hole through the cheap motel lamp. Jason fired back, forcing the shooters to take cover. This was their chance. Go! Vanessa bolted for the back exit, Jason following right behind her. They burst out into the alley, running for the crowded streets. They had no car, no backup, but Jason knew if they could just disappear into the city, they had a chance. More bullets whizzed past them. They sprinted into a busy intersection, disappearing into a sea of people. Behind them, the masked men didn't follow. They had missed their chance, but Jason knew what this meant. They were done playing games. Whoever was behind this wasn't just covering their tracks anymore. They were tying up loose ends. And Jason and Vanessa were next. Meanwhile, inside Brighton Maximum Security Prison, Ryan Calloway sat in his cell, waiting. He knew Jason would come through. Jason was the only person who still believed in him. But then the guards came for him. They yanked him from his cot, dragging him into a small interview room. The air stank of sweat and cigarette smoke. Ryan looked up, his eyes locking onto the warden. His face was cold, unreadable. You should sit down, Calloway. Ryan didn't move. His gut twisted. Your daughter's missing. Ryan felt the words hit him like a bullet. The room blurred. His mind went blank. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then his rage exploded. He lunged at the warden, his body a force of fury. It took 3 guards to restrain him, slamming him against the table. Where is she? Ryan roared. The warden barely blinked. Ryan struggled, his entire body shaking with rage. Where is my daughter? No one answered. One of the guards struck him in the ribs with a baton, sending him crashing to the floor. But Ryan didn't care. He didn't feel the pain. All he could see was Lily, alone, scared, somewhere out there. And he was locked in a cage, unable to do a damn thing. The guards dragged him away, shoving him down the corridor. He barely heard them talking. His ears were ringing. His vision blurred. Then the door to solitary confinement swung open. The cell was dark, small. The walls closed in around him. Ryan collapsed onto the floor, his breath coming in ragged gasps. And then he prayed, not for himself, not for justice, but for his little girl. And a single vow etched itself into his soul. No matter what it took, he was getting out. He was going to find her. The prison walls had never felt tighter. Ryan Calloway sat on the cold floor of his solitary confinement cell, his mind a battlefield of rage, fear, and desperation. He had spent years locking criminals away, and now he was the one rotting in a cage. But it wasn't his fate that consumed him. Lily was out there, alone, afraid, and he was useless in here. A tray of inedible food slid through the small slot in the door. He ignored it. His body was exhausted, but his mind refused to rest. The walls blurred around him, closing in like a vice. He had been trained to keep his composure, to think logically in moments of crisis. But this wasn't a case. This was his daughter. A deep, steadying breath did nothing to calm him. He forced himself to think. Jason was out there, and Jason wouldn't stop. But was that enough? Ryan clenched his fists. No, it wasn't. Hannah Reyes leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The dimly lit office smelled of stale coffee and printer ink. Boxes of old case files littered the floor, evidence of a journalist who had spent her career hunting the truth. But now she was looking at Jason with something dangerously close to pity. You're asking me to go up against the entire Brighton PD, Hannah said. Corrupt or not, they don't play fair. You of all people should know that. Jason exhaled sharply. I'm not asking you to go up against them. I'm asking you to expose them. Hannah didn't blink. And you think I haven't been trying? You think I haven't had cops show up outside my house at 2 a.m.? Had my sources disappear? Jason ran a hand through his hair. I have a witness, a woman who saw who really killed Darius Kemp. She's willing to testify. Hannah's expression shifted. Jason pressed on. They're covering up a murder. They're burying evidence. And they kidnapped a child, Hannah, Lily Calloway. She's 7. 7 years old. Hannah exhaled slowly. Jason could see it now, the moment she crossed the line from skeptical to furious. But then she said something that made his stomach sink. If we expose them now, they'll kill her before we ever find her. Jason's jaw clenched. You need more than a witness, Hannah continued. You need something so big, so undeniable, that they can't sweep it under the rug. And right now, you don't have that. Jason's hands tightened into fists. So, what do we do? Hannah leaned forward. We set a trap. Back inside Brighton Maximum Security Prison, Ryan Calloway was about to make a deal with the guards. The guards didn't speak to him, didn't even look at him. They tossed him back into general population without a word, leaving him in the belly of the beast. He barely had time to steady himself before Trey, Ghost Johnson, sat down across from him in the yard. Ghost was a legend in the Brighton underworld, a former gang leader turned prison kingpin with scars that told 1,000 violent stories. T-Ghost smirked, tilting his D slightly as he studied Ryan. You look like hell, Calloway. Ryan's jaw tightened. I don't have time for games, Johnson. What do you want? Ghost leaned in, lowering his voice. You and we got a common enemy. Ryan's eyes narrowed. The same bastard who set you up is the one who put me in here, Ghost continued. Only difference is you got framed for a murder you didn't commit. Me? I got set up for a crime I actually did, but one that they ordered me to do. Then, when I wasn't useful anymore, they tossed me aside. Ryan's stomach turned. He had spent years seeing criminals like Ghost as nothing more than problems to solve, threats to eliminate. But this was something else entirely. I know things, Calloway, Ghost continued. I know who's pulling the strings. I know why they needed Kemp dead, and I know why they took your little girl. Ryan's breath hitched, but he masked it. Then why are you telling me this? Ghost chuckled, the sound dry and humorless. Because I don't plan on dying in here. And you? You're my ticket out. Ryan shook his head. If you know so much, why haven't you used it to get yourself free? Ghost's smirk faded. Because information ain't enough, Calloway. You know how this works. A rat in here doesn't live long enough to see the outside. I needed the right person, someone desperate enough, someone with nothing left to lose. Ryan clenched his fists. He hated that Ghost was right. You help me get my revenge, Ghost said, his voice a low whisper, and I'll get you out of here. Ryan stared at him for a long time, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. Then, finally, he extended his hand. Ghost grinned. That's what I thought. The stench of sweat and fear thickened the air and brightened maximum security as the first fist connected with flesh. A guttural yell followed, then another, as prisoners lunged at one another in a chaotic frenzy. Guards scrambled to contain the outbreak, but it spread like wildfire, engulfing the cell blocks in a maelstrom of violence. Ryan Calloway kept his head low, his pulse steady as he maneuvered through the chaos. The riot was the distraction Trey Ghost Johnson had promised, a smokescreen for their escape. Fights erupted all around him, prisoners settling old scores, some lashing out at the guards who had kept them caged. It was a brutal, unrestrained spectacle, but Ryan had no time to dwell on it. Ghost appeared beside him, slipping through the throng like a man who had done this before. He moved with an eerie calm, untouched by the swirling mayhem. You good, Calloway? He muttered, barely sparing Ryan a glance as he led him toward a service corridor near the back of the cell block. Just keep moving, Ryan said through clenched teeth. They reached a heavy steel door, partially obscured behind a stack of crates. Ghost shoved his weight against it, grunting as he forced it open just enough for them to slip through. Inside was a dimly lit maintenance corridor, its cracked concrete walls stained with time and neglect. The hallway stretched downward, leading into what had once been part of an underground drainage system. This tunnel, Ghost said, catching his breath, runs beneath the prison. Few people even know it exists. Ryan hesitated for only a second before stepping in. He didn't trust Ghost, but right now trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He had to get out. He had to find Lily. Ghost didn't follow. He lingered by the entrance, smirking faintly. This is where we part ways, Calloway. Ryan glanced back, confused. You're not coming? Ghost shook his head. I got unfinished business. He cracked his knuckles, rolling his shoulders. You go do what you gotta do. I'll take care of mine. Ryan gave him a final nod before turning into the darkness. The tunnel was cold and damp, the air thick with mildew. Rusted pipes lined the ceiling, some dripping water onto the cracked concrete floor. He moved fast, his footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. But he wasn't alone for long. The sound of boots pounding against the floor filled the tunnel, bouncing off the walls like distant thunder. The guards had found the tunnel. "He's in here," a voice barked from behind. Ryan pushed forward, barely able to see more than a few feet ahead. The tunnel twisted sharply, forcing him to make split-second turns. He couldn't afford to slow down. A flashlight beam slashed through the darkness, bouncing wildly as the first guard charged in. "Stop right there," the guard shouted, raising his baton. Ryan didn't stop. He surged forward, closing the distance before the guard could react. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting sharply until he heard a sickening crack. The guard screamed, his baton clattering to the ground. Ryan drove a knee into his stomach, then slammed his elbow into the back of his head, knocking him out cold. More voices echoed down the tunnel. The chase was on. Ryan sprinted forward, weaving through the labyrinthine pathways. The tunnel wasn't as abandoned as he had hoped. Sections had caved in over time, forcing him to navigate around debris. He barely squeezed past a rusted maintenance gate when gunfire rang out behind him. Bullets ricocheted off the metal pipes, sending sparks flying in the dim passage. He ducked low, forcing himself to keep moving. His lungs burned, his legs screamed for relief, but he couldn't stop. Then up ahead, light the exit. Ryan pushed harder, ignoring the sharp stitch in his side. The guards' voices were getting closer again. He could hear the pounding of their boots against the concrete floor, their shouts growing more urgent. He reached the end of the tunnel, where a rusted maintenance grate covered a ladder leading to the outside world. Ryan leapt onto the rungs, climbing as fast as his aching arms would allow. Below, the first guard skidded to a halt at the ladder's base. "He's going up." Ryan didn't look down. He focused on the hatch above him. His fingers grasped the rusted latch. Locked. He gritted his teeth, yanked harder. The metal groaned, but didn't budge. The guards were already climbing. Desperate, Ryan braced one foot against the ladder and threw his full weight into the latch. It snapped open with a metallic shriek. Ryan shoved the hatch aside and pulled himself up just as a hand grabbed his ankle. He twisted violently, slamming his boot down. Crack! The guard below howled in pain, his grip loosening just long enough for Ryan to kick himself free. Ryan scrambled up on his solid ground, gasping for air. Then, a floodlight cut through the darkness. Freeze! Ryan barely had time to react before a shot rang out. He dove to the ground, the bullet missing his head by inches. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer by the second. Then, headlights flashed. A car screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley, the back door swinging open. "Get in, Jason Carter." Ryan sprinted for the car, his lungs burning. The second his foot hit the floorboard, Jason peeled out, tires screeching against the asphalt. The city blurred past them, neon lights streaking across the windows as Jason weaved through traffic. Behind them, distant sirens continued to wail. Ryan barely caught his breath before grabbing Jason's arm. "Where is she?" Jason's grip on the wheel tightened. "We don't know yet." Ryan's vision tunneled. "She's out there, Ryan," Jason continued, his voice steady. "But I swear to you, we're gonna find her." Ryan's fist clenched. He had escaped. Now he was going to war. The world thought Ryan Calloway was on the run. The news painted him as a desperate fugitive, a disgraced cop who had escaped prison with nothing left to lose. Every major outlet blasted his mugshot across the screen, warning the public that he was armed and dangerous. Ryan didn't care. Let them think whatever they wanted. As far as he was concerned, there was only one truth. His daughter was out there, and he was going to get her back. Sitting in the dimly lit back seat of Jason Carter's car, Ryan pulled the hood of his stolen sweatshirt over his head. His jaw clenched as he stared at the city blurring past the window. The familiar streets of Brighton felt different now. Every alley, every corner, every traffic light could be the place where someone recognized him, where a patrol car might pull up and end his hunt before it even started. Jason drove in silence, his grip tight on the wheel. The tension between them was thick, unspoken. The car smelled of sweat, exhaustion, and adrenaline. In the front passenger seat, investigative journalist Hannah Reyes scrolled through her phone, reading the latest updates aloud. "They've issued a citywide manhunt," she muttered. "Brighton PD is offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to your capture." Ryan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "They're moving fast." "Too fast," Jason said. "Someone high up is pushing this hard." Ryan nodded, already knowing why. "Because they need me gone before I get to Lily." Jason's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "Then we move first." Hannah turned to face Ryan. "Before we do anything, you need to know what we found. This goes beyond your conviction. It's bigger than you." Ryan met her gaze. "I don't care how big it is. I only care about my daughter." "I know," Hannah said, her voice even but firm, "but understanding who's behind this is the only way to get her back." Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Tell me everything." Jason pulled the car into a small underground garage beneath an abandoned auto shop, one of his old case spots. They had to stay off the radar. As soon as the car was parked, they moved quickly inside, locking the door behind them. Hannah laid out a stack of files on a dusty table, flipping through the pages with precise efficiency. "We've been working off Vanessa Green's testimony," she began. "She saw the two officers who actually killed Darius Kemp the night he was murdered." Jason folded his arms, exhaling sharply. "But she was too afraid to talk because they threatened her life." Ryan's eyes flicked over to the thick file Hannah was pulling open. "So who were they?" Hannah didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a deep breath before turning the folder around so Ryan could see the two photographs clipped inside. Ryan's stomach tightened. "Captain Greg Wallace. Lieutenant Eric Munhol." Ryan's pulse pounded in his ears. "Wallace," he murmured, barely able to get the word out. Jason nodded. "He led the case against you. He's the reason you were convicted." Ryan's fists curled at his sides. Wallace had been the lead investigator. He was the one who found the ballistics evidence. The one who testified that Ryan had motive. The one who stood in court looking Ryan in the eye and said that the evidence was airtight. Now Ryan knew why. He had built his entire career working side by side with corrupt men and never even realized it. Hannah continued. "Wallace and Monroe weren't acting alone. They were protecting someone powerful. And that's where things take a turn." She slid another file forward. Ryan's eyes landed on the name stamped across the front. "Victor Langley." Ryan exhaled through his nose. "Who the hell is he?" Jason sat down on the edge of the table. "Langley's not just some rich guy. He's a power broker. Real estate. Investments. Law enforcement contracts. You name it, he's got his hands in it. He's been backing Wallace and several high-ranking officers for years." Ryan's blood ran cold. "And he has Lily?" Hannah nodded. "We have reason to believe so." Jason pulled out his phone, opening a blurred security still from a school parking lot. This was taken the day she went missing. "See the van?" He pointed to a dark vehicle in the background. Ryan stared at the image, his stomach nodding. Jason continued. "That's a private security firm. No known contracts with BPD. No connection to the school district. But we ran a deep search." He looked up, his expression grim. "That firm is owned by Langley's company." Ryan's hands tightened into fists. It was all connected. His conviction, the murder of Darius Kemp, the corruption inside the department, and now his daughter. "Langley wanted me out of the way," Ryan muttered. "He succeeded," Jason said. "He put you in a cage. And now, with you on the run, the whole city's looking for you. If you go anywhere near Langley, he'll use that to his advantage." Ryan's jaw clenched. "Then I don't go near him. I go through him." Jason hesitated, but he could see in Ryan's eyes there was no talking him down. "We need a plan." Ryan paced the room, his mind working. "We can't storm the place," he said. "Not with Lily inside." Jason nodded. "Langley's estate is a fortress. Private security, cameras, gated entry. Even if we get past that, we don't know where they're keeping her." Hannah tapped her fingers on the table, deep in thought. "Then you need to become someone Langley doesn't see coming." Ryan turned to her. "How?" She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "We make you a ghost. Unseen, unheard, unstoppable. You don't go in as Ryan Calloway the fugitive. You go in as something else entirely." Jason caught on. "A shadow." Ryan thought for a long moment. He had spent years working as a detective, but he wasn't an undercover agent. This would be dangerous, and if he got caught, no, that wasn't an option. I'm going in, Ryan said firmly, and I'm getting my daughter back. Jason exhaled through his nose. Then, let's get to work. The hunt had begun. The night was silent, but Ryan Calloway knew better than to trust it. From their vantage point across the dense tree line, he and Jason Carter had a clear view of Victor Langley's estate, a sprawling, modernized fortress that sat on the outskirts of Brighton. The place was built like a compound, with armed guards at every entrance, motion-triggered floodlights, and a state-of-the-art surveillance system. The main building, a 3-story mansion of sleek black glass and steel, loomed over the surrounding landscape like a throne of power. Jason adjusted the infrared binoculars and let out a slow breath. This place is locked down tight, he muttered. And Langley's got mercenaries, not just security guards. These guys are ex-military, maybe even government-trained. Ryan barely heard him. His entire body was wound tight, his pulse hammering in his skull. He didn't care how many men were inside. His daughter was in there. Jason must have seen the fire in his eyes because he lowered the binoculars and turned to him. Ryan, we have to do this smart. Rushing gets you killed, and Lily... I know, Ryan said, voice clipped. He knew he had to stay controlled. That was the only thing keeping him from going, and guns blazing. His mind worked fast, mapping out an infiltration strategy. He had spent 18 years in law enforcement, including tactical operations and undercover work. He knew how security systems functioned, where the weak spots were, how to move unseen. He studied the patrol patterns of the guards, tracking their rotations. The estate had blind spots. Every security system did. The outer perimeter cameras had dead zones between movement sweeps, and the guards, despite their training, followed predictable paths. He could slip in. Jason tapped his earpiece. Hannah, how's it looking? Over comms, Hannah Reyes's voice crackled. I'm in their security feeds. Motion sensors on the east and south sides. West Garden is your best entry point. Least coverage. Ryan exhaled sharply. That's my way in. Jason hesitated. I still don't like you going in alone. Ryan met his gaze. I need you watching the cameras and causing a distraction when I need it. Jason grimaced but nodded. All right, just don't get yourself killed. Ryan secured his weapons, slid a tactical knife into his boot, and adjusted the black hoodie over his head. Then, without another word, he disappeared into the darkness. Ryan moved like a ghost, weaving through the shadows, slipping past the outer perimeter fence without a sound. He timed his steps with the shifting lights, crouching low as a guard passed just feet away. When the moment was right, he struck, swift, silent, precise. His arm wrapped around the guard's neck, cutting off air instantly. A sharp twist, a muffled thud as the body slumped to the ground, one down. He dragged the body into the bushes, took the guard's earpiece, and moved forward. With each takedown, he moved deeper into Langley's estate, his focus razor-sharp. His rage was there, but he kept it locked down tight. This wasn't about revenge. This was about Lily. Inside the house, Ryan pressed himself against a corridor wall, listening. Voices drifted from an office down the hall. He recognized one immediately. Captain Greg Wallace. Ryan edged closer, staying out of sight. Every word sent ice through his veins. This situation is getting out of hand, Wallace was saying. The man escaped a maximum security prison. We should have put him down when we had the chance. Langley's voice followed, smooth, measured. Relax, Captain. Calloway has no power. He's a fugitive with a target on his back. And if he's stupid enough to come here, we'll put him down ourselves. There was a long pause. Then Wallace's voice turned colder. And the girl? Ryan held his breath. Langley sighed. She's leverage. If Calloway doesn't surrender himself soon, we'll make him. Ryan's grip on his knife tightened so hard his knuckles turned white. They never planned on letting her go. But before he could process his next move, he heard it. A small voice, soft, trembling. Daddy? Ryan moved fast. Following the voice, he reached a locked room at the far end of the mansion. He wasted no time picking the lock, his fingers working with mechanical precision. As soon as the door clicked open, Lily launched herself into his arms, sobbing. I knew you'd come, she whispered. Ryan held her tight, pressing a kiss to her forehead. He didn't have the luxury of time. They had to move. He knelt to her level. "Baby, listen to me. We have to be very quiet, okay?" Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. Ryan scooped her into his arms and moved. He navigated back through the halls, avoiding guards where he could, eliminating them where he couldn't. Every step was a calculated movement. Then the alarm blared. They knew. "Jason," Ryan barked into the stolen earpiece. "I've got Lily. I need that diversion now." "On it," Jason said. Seconds later, an explosion rocked the outer perimeter. The estate security scrambled, and Ryan used the chaos to sprint toward the exit. But gunfire erupted behind him. Ryan shielded Lily with his body, dodging between cover, his pulse roaring in his ears. He took down 2 guards with precise shots, but more were coming. Then a bullet tore through his shoulder. Ryan staggered, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Jason's car skidded into the driveway, tires screeching. "Move!" Jason shouted. Ryan shoved Lily into the back seat and dived in after her, pressing his hand against his bleeding shoulder as Jason floored the gas. Bullets slammed into the back of the car as Langley's men fired wildly. But Jason took a sharp turn onto the main road, losing them in the night. Ryan's breath came in ragged gasps. His shoulder throbbed. His vision swam. But through the pain, he looked down at Lily. She clung to him, her small hands trembling, but unharmed. Ryan let his head fall back against the seat, exhaling sharply. She was safe. The adrenaline had begun to wear off, and with it, Ryan Calloway could feel every ounce of the pain searing through his body. His shoulder wound pulsed, the hastily wrapped bandage barely stopping the bleeding, but he refused to rest. Not yet. Not until Langley and Wallace were finished. Jason pulled the car into a discreet garage beneath the safe house, a nondescript building tucked away in a part of town no one thought twice about. Hannah Reyes and Vanessa Green were already waiting inside when Jason ushered Ryan and Lily through. The door. Lily clung to her father, exhausted but unwilling to let go. She had barely spoken since they had escaped, but Ryan could feel her tiny hands gripping the fabric of his jacket like a lifeline. "You're safe now, baby," Ryan whispered as he knelt, brushing a hand through her hair. "No one's ever going to take you from me again." She didn't answer, only nodding against his chest. Jason exchanged a look with Hannah, who crossed her arms. "She needs rest, Ryan," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You both do." Ryan stood his jaw tight. "I don't have time for that." Jason let out a frustrated sigh. "Ryan, listen, I get it." "No," Ryan cut him off, his voice firm but quiet. "You don't," he turned to Vanessa. "You said Langley kept records, something physical. What was it?" Vanessa hesitated, shifting under the weight of their gazes. Then she took a deep breath. It was a ledger, she admitted, a black book. He never trusted electronic records, too easy to track. Everything he did, the bribes, the payouts to dirty cops, the deals with traffickers, it was all in that book. Ryan's entire body stiffened. A physical ledger was gold. If they got their hands on it, Langley's entire empire would collapse. "Where is it?" Vanessa swallowed hard. "I don't know, but if anyone kept it, it was Wallace." Ryan turned to Jason. "We find that book." Jason shook his head. "Ryan, you're barely standing. You're still bleeding, man." "I finish what I start," Ryan said, strapping his gun into his holster. Jason muttered a curse, but grabbed his own weapon. "Fine, but if you pass out on me, I'm not carrying your ass out of there." Ryan gave a tired smirk. "Deal." Greg Wallace lived like a man who never expected to get caught. His house sat in an upscale neighborhood on the edge of Brighton, with a long driveway, high walls, and a security system built for paranoia. Jason parked 2 blocks away, and the 2 men moved on foot. Ryan ignored the burning in his shoulder as they scaled the fence, disabling the back gate's alarm with practiced precision. Inside the house, they moved like shadows. The place was immaculate. All polished wood floors, expensive furniture, and the faint scent of expensive cologne. Where would he keep it? Jason whispered. Ryan scanned the space, thinking like a cop, not like a criminal. Wallace was methodical, careful. He wouldn't leave something so damning out in the open. "Office?" Ryan murmured. They made their way down the hall, and into a study lined with bookshelves and a massive oak desk. Jason went for the drawers while Ryan checked the bookshelves, searching for anything that seemed out of place. Then he saw it, a locked safe built into the bottom of the bookshelf. Ryan knelt, ignoring the pain stabbing through his side. Check the desk. He'll have the code somewhere. Jason rifled through papers, muttering under his breath, Come on, come on. Then he stilled. Ryan, look at this. Ryan turned as Jason handed him a small flash drive. It's body cam footage, Jason said grimly. Dated the night of the murder. Ryan's heart slammed against his ribs. Body cam footage of the crime scene. He plugged it into a laptop on Wallace's desk, his fingers tight with tension as the video loaded. The footage was grainy but undeniable. Two officers, faces clear as day, entering Darius Kemp's apartment. Neither of them was Ryan. Ryan inhaled sharply. Wallace had erased it from the department's records, but he kept a copy as insurance. Jesus, Jason muttered. They had this the whole time. Ryan clenched his fists, forcing down the rage simmering inside him. Not yet. They weren't done. Find that safe code. Jason dug through the desk until he found a notepad. Scribbled on the back, barely visible from an attempt to erase it, were 6 numbers. Ryan input the code, and with a soft click, the safe unlocked. Inside was a worn black notebook. Ryan opened it, scanning the pages. Bribes, names, transactions, payouts to Wallace and others. It was all there. Game over, Jason whispered. But before they could move, a voice cut through the silence. You really should have stayed in prison, Calloway. Ryan turned just as Greg Wallace stepped into the room, gun drawn. His expression was unreadable, cold and calm, like a man who'd already made his decision. Drop the book, Wallace ordered. Ryan held his ground. You killed Kemp, and you used me to cover your ass. Wallace smirked. That's cute. You think anyone's going to believe a fugitive? You're done, Calloway. Ryan didn't answer. He just moved. Fast. He lunged, slamming into Wallace before he could fire. The gun went off, a deafening explosion in the small office, but the shot went wide, shattering a glass cabinet. Ryan ignored the pain in his shoulder, focusing everything on the fight. Wallace was bigger, stronger, but Ryan had nothing to lose. They crashed into the desk, toppling paperwork and books. Wallace got a hand around Ryan's throat, but Ryan drove his knee into the man's ribs, forcing him back. Jason kicked Wallace's gun away, but the man grabbed a paperweight from the desk and swung. The heavy metal connected with Ryan's injured shoulder. Ryan saw a white-hot pain explode in his vision, but he didn't stop. With a roar, he grabbed Wallace and slammed his head against the desk. Wallace slumped, dazed, blood dripping from his forehead. Ryan loomed over him, chest heaving. He could end it. Wallace had framed him, kidnapped his daughter, and put a price on his head. He deserved worse. But Ryan just took a step back. You put my daughter in danger, he said, voice low. Wallace couldn't even speak. Outside, sirens wailed. Jason exhaled. I called in the cavalry. Ryan nodded. Then let's end this. They had the book, the footage, and the names. Langley and Wallace were finished, and Ryan Calloway was finally going to clear his name. The sun had barely risen when Hannah Reyes broke the story. She didn't hold back. The body cam footage clearing Ryan Calloway. The ledger revealing Victor Langley's web of bribes, illegal deals, and dirty cops. The testimonies that exposed the entire cover-up. Every news outlet in the country ran with it. By mid-morning, the FBI had descended on Brighton, PD, Langley's estate, and multiple locations tied to the corruption. Arrest warrants were issued in bulk, and one by one, the dominoes began to fall. By 9 a.m., the FBI had begun executing their warrants. But Captain Greg Wallace was already on the run. Agents found Wallace's abandoned vehicle in a parking garage downtown. His phone was deactivated, and his apartment was cleared out, signs that he had planned his escape well in advance. It didn't take long for authorities to track him. The FBI intercepted him just outside the city, attempting to cross state lines in an unregistered vehicle. The arrest was swift and uneventful. Wallace didn't resist. He knew there was no way out. By noon, he was in federal custody. At Langley's estate, Federal agents swarmed the property. The kingpin of Brighton's corruption empire was cornered. Langley tried to run, to take a private helicopter out of state, but the feds had already locked down his flight plan. Instead, he was tackled on his front lawn, his expensive suit smeared with dirt, as agents pressed his face into the grass and read him his rights. Inside Brighton PD, panic spread like wildfire. Officers whispered in hallways. Some started shredding documents. Others tried to act like they hadn't been part of it. But it was too late. The FBI didn't just arrest Wallace and Langley. They arrested every single officer named in the ledger. More than a dozen cops, some of them high-ranking, were led out of the precinct in handcuffs. Some tried to argue. Others demanded to speak to their lawyers. None of it mattered. The reckoning had arrived. By the time Ryan Calloway was escorted into the courtroom for his official exoneration, the entire city was watching. He sat in silence as the judge reviewed the new evidence. He didn't flinch when Wallace's name was read aloud or when the court clerk detailed how his conviction had been built on lies. He only listened for one thing. The moment the judge's gavel came down and the words left his mouth, "Ryan Calloway, you are officially exonerated of all charges." A deep breath, a lifetime of weight lifted off his shoulders, and then freedom. The courtroom doors swung open, and the first thing Ryan saw was Lily. She stood in the hallway, her small hands clenched together, eyes wide with hope. The second she saw him, she broke into a run. Ryan dropped to his knees just as she crashed into his arms. He held her so tight, he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. "We're going home, baby," he whispered into her hair. Lily clung to him, sobbing into his shirt. The nightmare was over. Ryan Calloway was finally going home. The waves rolled gently onto the shore, their rhythmic crashing the only sound breaking the stillness of the evening. Ryan Calloway stood at the water's edge, his shoes sinking slightly into the damp sand as he watched his daughter run along the shoreline. The golden hues of the setting sun bathed her in warm light, her laughter carrying through the salty air. For the first time in months, she sounded like a child again. Jason Carter and Hannah Reyes sat nearby on a driftwood log, watching in comfortable silence. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. With Langley and Wallace gone, Brighton PD had erupted into scandal. Corruption probes led to more arrests. And while some officers genuinely hadn't known what was happening, many had turned a blind eye. The department would never be the same. Not that Ryan cared, it wasn't his concern anymore. Jason kicked at the sand. "It's strange, isn't it, knowing it's finally over?" Ryan turned his gaze from the waves. "Is it?" he asked, voice quiet. Jason sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "I guess not. Brighton PD is still cleaning up the mess. And you know there are others out there, guys like Langley with power, money, and friends in the right places." Ryan nodded. He knew that all too well. The corruption they had exposed was deep, but it wasn't the whole picture. Langley had been a major player, but he wasn't the player. Men like him didn't rise to power alone. There were always more. Hannah, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "You could do something about it," she said. "The city needs people who won't back down, who won't turn a blind eye." Ryan exhaled, watching as Lily splashed in the shallows. "Maybe," he said after a long pause, "but right now she needs me more." Jason nodded in understanding. "So what now?" Ryan didn't have an answer. For the first time in his life, he had no case to solve, no badge to wear, no orders to follow. The city he had spent years protecting had cast him aside. And now, even after being proven innocent, he wasn't sure if he wanted to be part of it anymore. But as he watched Lily race along the sand, her laughter filling the air, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, he would always fight for what was right. And this time, no one would ever take that from him again. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.